Are you waiting for me, or have you hit live yet?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. Let's get started then.
Yeah.
Hail cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. What a Sunday, Brandon. An amazing Sunday that only Man City fans could love, I think, right? Fantasy fans,
Yep.
tough one. Premier League title enthusiasts or whatever, people who wanted to, I mean, not that the race is over, but man, that was a couple own goals today, Brandon, from Arsenal and Liverpool, weren't there?
Well, so we made a thing about our on the beach index last week on the main feed, and maybe there's a twist in the on the beach tale where Arsenal and Liverpool are the beach teams, the ones that couldn't quite get things going. I mean, I guess there were two different problems plaguing these teams. Liverpool, again, incredibly profligate in front of goal, and Arsenal just
It's like a
couldn't.
profligate's like a word that you only use in the context of talking about like football matches, right? It's like I think I've ever used it in my. Have you ever used profligate like outside of this context? Like, you ever like worked with an employee who was profligate or something like that?
No, I mean, as I stroll through the biblical tales that are my life, maybe I do use the word.
Yeah, there could be some more of that.
But yeah, not often. And then I don't know. Arsenal just seemed rather disjointed, and maybe they were just a little distracted by the Bayern Munich return leg that's happening in this upcoming week. So this just
do you think that's what it is? Yeah. I mean. You think it was the Champions League? Like it wasn't a great performance in the Champions League, and so yeah, I mean it might have been. I mean I wouldn't have thought that I feel like if anything like the Premier League could have taken a back, or I mean the Champions League could have taken a back seat this year, right?
Oh
I mean,
yeah, the Champions League can wait, fellas. But I look at the Arsenal team, and there's obviously so much to love there. And I think the thing that's really exciting about Arsenal is how young a squad, relatively speaking, they have. So to be fighting so well on both campaigns might be a distraction. And that was the coming out of the first leg of Bayern Munich was, wow, Bayern's experience really saw them through that draw, and Arsenal just need to put their head down and keep going so that they can gain more and more experience as they go and keep the squad together, fit, growing.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, or I don't know, to paint a whole picture here, I mean, Klopp did the opposite, right? Which is he didn't start Diaz, didn't start Salah at midweek in the Europa League. They lost that match, but clearly prioritized the Premier League, and they lost 1-0 at home too. So who knows, right? Who knows if Europe is just an excuse or not? But yeah, it's I'm a little like I was surprised by how down I was. I mean, everyone sort of gets on me for being a kind of fake Arsenal fan, and I didn't mean for it to be this way, Brandon. It's just we've done about 600 episodes of this podcast now over the years, and at some point, we're not quite in the business of football, or I guess we kind of are. We have an LLC, so technically we are literally in the business of football. But at some point, when you start talking about fantasy this much, it does sort of take over a little bit. And I think it's sort of what I really wanted, though. Well, yeah, of course I wanted Arsenal to win, and I was pretty disappointed. But what I really wanted was one of those two clubs to be Arsenal, Liverpool, to be leading going into Gameweek 38, right? That felt ideal. And I'm not saying it's over, but when you look at the fixtures to come for Arsenal, Liverpool, and Man City, it's hard to see a loss, a full 3-point loss for Man City on the cards, and it's a little easier to see one for Arsenal. Even Liverpool, Villa away, I think is a tough match. Arsenal to play Spurs and Man United away. So I don't mean I don't want to make people who are Liverpool and Arsenal fans even more disheartened than they are.
Lay off. Jeez.
Yeah. Wow. I know, but I'm processing myself. I feel like I'm getting it out of my system right now, so we can talk about Game Week 34, which is a proper game week. But I was talking a minute ago on Twitter, and I was saying that I was so disappointed that I didn't even have time to mourn my own FPL team today, which was a disaster. I had 6 players from Liverpool and Arsenal, and I got 6 blanks. I got nothing from all of them, and which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't like a shocker for our boy Debu to have a good match. Had a couple of good stops today, Trossard in particular, but Dean Henderson was really the star, right? I mean, he was extraordinary. It was one of those
Yeah.
rare matches where, I mean, Dean Anderson was awesome, like back in the Sheffield days, right? Like 3 years ago, like he had
Yeah,
that
well, you have to
fantastic
cast your
season.
mind way back, and then
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
that point where he thought, "I'm going back to Old Trafford to push
yep,
David De Gea off his throne, and there I will
yep,
sit for eternity." And he's kind
yep,
of been cast
yep.
about since.
Yeah, and well, he did Man United supporters a solid today with that
Sure,
performance. He should have let at
yeah,
least one in, just to kick them a little bit. Is he still on loan, or I think he just officially is gone now?
dude,
I think they just
I
sold
don't
him.
know. I've
Yeah,
not been on Henderson detail for a while.
yeah. I think I think it was a sale.
Sign him
I think
though.
it's
Build the
over.
statue in front of
Yeah.
Selhurst Park.
All right, so enough venting about the Premier League table. People got very mad at me when I said I felt like the table was over on Twitter earlier today. I was kind of just venting my frustration. I'm not saying it's over, but look, you know what? Let's do one last thing, and then
Okay.
we'll do Game Week 34 because
Okay.
this week's pod is simple, right? It's
Yeah.
double Game Week 34. It's the most important game week of the season so far, arguably the most important game week of the season, just bar none. A lot of the best teams in the Premier League play twice or two, I guess I should really say, Arsenal and Liverpool. But there's also just a lot of decisions to get made. I think the captaincy has suddenly got a lot more interesting. Salah suddenly looks like he's like 31 going on 42 or something. I don't know what's happened to him over the last like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But so there's a lot to talk about in this week's pod. So I think we can get into it, and we're not really going to look ahead to Game Week 35, wild cards, all that stuff. What we're going to do in today's pod is go position by position, right? So we're going to talk about best. So whether you're free hitting, whether you're just using transfers, whether you're just setting up your team correctly, we're going to go keepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards in that order, right? And talk about our top picks for 34. Then we're going to take a couple of questions, talk about the captaincy a little bit, talk a little bit about our teams as well. But just let me ask you, Brandon, to finish off our table title talk here. All right. So Man City, 6 fixtures left this season. Okay. You tell me where the loss is here. Okay. Brighton away.
That's a win for City, I think.
Forest away.
I'm going to back City in that one.
Wolves home.
Well, that's going to be a tight affair, Josh, but I think City are going to squeak by.
Here is where it gets a little trickier. 37. Fulham away, Spurs away.
Well, the Cottagers are up for it this season, and Spurs are the Man City Achilles heel.
Okay.
So if they drop points, this is the week to look for if you're Liverpool Arsenal fans. I would venture they'll take, I think at worst, maybe 3 to 4 points. Yeah,
I'm thinking 4 from 6 as well. So that might be the chance. But again, it really requires so again, is the title race over? No. Is there any slack on the like line or whatever for like whatever mixing my like what am I doing, like a fishing metaphor? I'm not even really sure, but like basically the line is about to snap. Right,
or you're garroting somebody from behind. I'm not quite sure.
I think it's the Premier League title is like a big mouth bass, Brandon, in a Lake Michigan, and in Lake Michigan, okay, or in any one of the Great Lakes. Okay, you pick the Great Lake. We could go coho salmon if you want. It doesn't matter to me, right?
But I do love a good coho. Yeah,
we all do. They swim upstream, But anyway, so it's a big mouth bass, and it's pulling at that line, and the line is very taut. And if you're not careful, the line's going to snap. You're going to lose that fish. And the line is about as tight as it's ever been for both those two clubs. So let's see what happens, and let's from there move on to FPL talk, Brandon.
Please.
How did you actually? I think you in the end, with your kind of insane just starting defenders in difficult away matches, it continues to work for you, right? I feel like you ended up you must be on a pretty decent green arrow, all things considered.
Yeah, I am on a green arrow. The good things that happened to me were probably the most improbable things to happen today, and that was Leno getting a 9-pointer and Pau Torres getting a clean sheet at the Emirates. So I'm on 50 with Cole Palmer to play, which puts me up to 510K. That's a green arrow. The game week rank is around 2.8 million. So I'm kind of on the average. Losing the Gabriel Saliba clean sheets, a bit of a ding. I mean, I think most of it was actually the Ollie Watkins goal. that diminished the green arrow a little bit there with the people who still
Yeah.
have him. But it having Pau Torres on the pitch with his clean sheet, seeing my the Arsenal clean sheets go away, made that like not even painful at all, to be honest with you, and put me in a decent position. So I have to feel kind of good about this game week. Now it's a lot of
I would
small
say
gains.
so.
Yeah. I have to feel good.
How
It is
small
a
are your
lot of
gains? I mean, I mean, how much are you up right now? How many spots?
Well, let's see, up to 510. Started the game week at 576. So yeah, that's like a
It's
66,000
like
green arrow.
11% jump. I'd say that's pretty good.
Do I set too high a standard for myself and those around me? I'll just put that out there. You don't have to answer that.
Yeah, I do this. I do the same thing though, both for my fantasy team and honestly for you as well.
Yeah.
So, and both
So
of us probably
you love
unfair
to
at
make
times.
you love to make fun of me and Pau Torres doing our whole buddy cop thing, but here we are. We're the ones having the
Worked
last
out.
laugh, Josh.
Well, you're having a laugh. I don't think I'm not going to call it the
Yeah.
last one. Yeah. Are you going to keep him on your game week 35 wildcard just for sentimental reasons? Like just
I don't
been there
see
so
a
long?
reason to keep him with the bench boost happening in 37 and Villa
No,
double.
no,
So I
just
mean, the
joking.
only
Yeah.
Villa player to have is Ollie Watkins for obvious reasons, and I
Yeah.
think that's even an argument that you have to make.
Yeah.
So this was his last ride for sure, as I planned a wild card in 35.
What a last ride.
Thanks, Pau. How about you?
I guess I'm on a green arrow. I don't know if it'll last tomorrow. It kind of depends on whether Chelsea keep a clean sheet or not. I made 2 transfers this week. I brought in I brought in Saliba and Luis Diaz. Got a total of 3 points from them. Benched Robinson and his clean sheet, so that worked out well. Got a clean sheet from Dubravka. I guess it's like maybe literally the only good. And I guess I kept it Haaland over Salah. That was the other. It felt like there was a bit of a debate there. Actually, in some of the stat tables, actually had Salah over Haaland as well. So getting that right, I think, was huge. The Solanke goal was more impactful than I was expecting as well. His effective ownership was a little lower than I was expecting.
A lot of people have given up on Solanke, and it's that kind of makes game week 34 very interesting for him. Like, how many people will come back to him? Is he a big edge that we have who still held the faith?
Still 3 goals in his last 5 matches. I mean, not terrible. And in 34, I mean, they're both away matches, Villa and Wolves, but they're not terrible. And it's also his price is reasonable as well. So yeah, I'm feeling like it looks like it'll be a small green arrow. I mean, Palmer, I still have Palmer as do you, but I doubt that's going to help me very much unless he got 50 points or something, right? Like it would take a huge haul for him to really override the fact that he's so widely owned at this point, as he should be, right? It's interesting because I kept like putting different like kind of moves into review to like sort of as I was looking ahead to game week 34, trying to find some like ideas, inspiration, and things like that. And they kind of all involve Palmer out because I used my little transfer slider and I only looked at one game week, right? Because I'm playing the wild card in 35. Okay. But the problem is you really can't drop Palmer, even though I don't plan to start him in 34. Right? If you're bench boosting, that would be one thing. But if you're not bench boosting, because I bought him at, let's see, his price now is it 6? No, that can't be right. Is it? Is he only 6.1 million? Yeah. So he's 6. Yeah. So he's 6.1 million, but my sell on value for him would be 5.7. Right. Yeah. So I'd be, losing almost $500,000.
Yeah. It screws up your budget too close to playing a wild card, I'd say, because you'd have to buy him right back.
Yeah. So, why don't we just because we haven't really, it's just our 2 faces here, Brandon. And as much as I like looking at it, what's your hat, by the way? It's
I've got a little legend hat, and for people who like camping gear, my deep love of camping, Josh. I went camping once when I was, but they do nice colorful hats. So Legend, check them out.
Nice. Are these all just now that you're in Toronto? Is it just you just go shopping to like kill the time? Is that what you're doing? You're just popping into these shops and buying clothes?
Yeah. The wife and I have just said everything there's left to be said. Speaking of Toronto, just a quick shout out to everyone who came out to the Toronto meetup on Saturday. I've got to thank Noah, who recommended the venue Scotland Yard, which was perfect. Also, Lucas and Shane, who are wonderful Patreon supporters, and also Stefan, who's going to help me get a mortgage. So thanks, Stefan, for that.
Oh, really? Wow. Are you looking to buy?
No, but that's always the fun thing about coming out to these meetups to see other FPL managers. It's just the spectrum in which people work and what they do and their perspective on life. So we had a blast watching the matches, chatting, getting to know each other. So made me feel a little more settled. And I'll do a little less shopping now. Okay. Are you happy?
Yeah, hey, shop away. It's just save those receipts, So I have shared my team for Gameweek 34. And by the way, I mean, again, I have to say, I was so excited about Gameweek 33. I mean, I had when I was looking ahead to 33, I was like, it was basically like every single one of my players was playing a home match. I was like the only away match was Sarabia across my entire 11, and I was like, this could actually be a good week. Like things could actually go well, and it's just been a kind of tricky season, I will say, Brandon. So notice as we get closer to the end here, I'm sort of resigned to not having a great season. I'm in a
making
more
your peace.
mellow,
I like to see this. Yeah.
Exactly. I've made my it's like when you've got like a terminal disease or something. That's my fantasy team is a terminal disease.
Sure, you start thinking about the good times you had so much as
yeah,
how unfair
were
there
good times this fantasy team? I guess I had a nice run where I got out of the millions in the.
Well, I feel like your faith in Dubravka must be restored now. 2 clean sheets in 2 weeks. Yeah. That's been a boost to you.
That's an interesting question. What to do there? And so I just so you can take a look at it here, Brandon. I've shared my squad for Gameweek 34, and so at the moment, I have 9 double game week players. That does include Semenyo, who will likely not double or will not play, and I'm now planning to drop him. I will
the deal with Semenyo, he's got like a calf injury. Do we know what's going on with him?
At first it was they chalked it down to like an illness, but then it was like now it's a calf thing. So it's like an illness. Maybe I don't know. When you get ill, does it hurt your calves? I'm not really sure how that affected things. But
sounds like
hey
Quinn,
the 7-year-old.
Welcome to YouTube.
Wet. I don't know why they're soaking wet, but I don't want to know. It's 60 degrees here in New York, but that's not Celsius either. I just feel like what was I saying? I'm sorry.
Semenyo is out, so just counting the doublers you've got on screen. Yeah, I hear your distraction. You're good. Semenyo out, so you've got 8 doublers. I wonder if Semenyo is a transfer you can make, and then it's your goalkeeper, which I think you were about to touch upon because we were big enough Dubravka.
That's exactly right. So because of the transfers I made, by the way, Virgil van Dijk, what a catastrophically bad transfer. They're all bad though. I mean, just like, and I honestly I'm glad I don't have Darwin now. I'm done with Darwin. I've done another 180. I did a 180 this season where I decided I love Darwin, and now I've 180'd again because I just don't. Can you win the title with a forward who is that chaotic? I'm not sure, right? Like it feels like he'd be more appealing as like a backup forward, someone who comes in and brings the fun, right? But him just like he was so hyped up today, like not in a way that I thought helped Liverpool. I thought he was like he had 3 cups too many cups of coffee or something before.
Do you remember, Josh, when I first saw the movie You, Me, and Dupree with Owen Wilson, and I told everyone, including you, I think this is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. I think we should all watch it.
It became like a bit, like how much you loved You, Me, and Dupree.
Yeah, and I committed to the bit. I would sit down with other people to watch it, and I would laugh, and I would think, oh, this is so funny. And upon like the 8th viewing of watching You, Me, and Dupree, I had this dawning realization of like, oh no, You, Me, and Dupree is actually not that great of a movie. And I feel like Darwin Nunez is getting the Dupree treatment here. Like maybe we should just start referring to him as Dupree from now on.
So are we on the same page then about him?
Well, I don't know. Darwin is just kind of a folk character at this point in my mind, and that I have only because I haven't really engaged with him in a fantasy context. I still
Mhm.
really only have joy in my heart for him.
Uh-huh.
Now,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
somebody who was planning a transfer strategy going into Game Week 34 that involved him, I'm probably not getting him at this
Really?
point. And
You've made like you're going that far with it that you're just
well,
not
I'm
going to
not.
get them at all.
I mean, I don't have any transfers that I'm willing to commit to here on Sunday. We've got a week to go, and
Yeah. So you have
I'm very
you have
curious to see what
yeah.
Liverpool what they run out on Thursday. And if Darwin
Yeah.
is rested, then I'm still gonna consider him, but there's no form to recommend getting him into your fantasy team right now.
Yeah. I mean, so you have your situation is that you have 3 Arsenal and 1 Liverpool. You have just Salah at the moment?
That's correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm woefully under served with Liverpool players here,
Well,
and
it's hard to
I,
I mean, it's honestly, it's like in theory, I was like going into the last couple of weeks, it was like, well, you should just be tripled up on these 2 clubs,
yeah,
and I still mostly feel that way about Arsenal. It's crazy that I waited so long to get the Arsenal double up, and then I finally got it this week for a combined 1 point from
yeah,
those 2 players. But and then honestly, it could have been more. I mean, Villa could have
yeah,
scored 4 goals in this match. It was a
yeah,
one-sided from minute 1, really.
yeah.
But yeah, so just to finish in my squad here for 1 second, my plan now is to move Semenyo to Mateta. I think that's the most logical move there. Um, I could actually bring in Cunha, and I suspect he's going to end up rising in price this. If he hasn't done it already, he's going to rise in price, and that he might price me out. But I think I slightly prefer Mateta anyway, just because it's 2 home matches, and I mean, I actually Wolves have 2 home matches as well, but one of them is Arsenal, so obviously just a little less appealing. And
Oh,
so I thought
interesting.
Mateta
Cunha
played well today too.
is classed as a forward. For whatever reason, I had in my mind he was a midfielder. That's an interesting one for me to consider, actually, as I look for a Muni's replacement. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
Cunha looked incredible on Saturday.
Yeah, he did, and
Yeah.
yeah, and Sarabi had a big chance as well in that match.
Hmm.
Just missed a kind of like a rebound that fell to him. That was an unusual match, that Wolves Forest game.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the question is basically, if I make the Mateta move, I'll still have 500,000. That would give me just enough to bring in a keeper, and I would probably, obviously I couldn't have one of the top keepers, but I'd be able to get Pickford or actually, I mean, I don't know. Dare I go all in on Palace? If I do, then I could bring in Henderson. So
Uh,
we'll go
okay.
position by position in a
Okay.
second here. So I don't want to jump the gun too much, but maybe I like a little bit of like balance of maybe one Palace player, one Everton player. That feels like plenty across those
Yeah.
across those 2 clubs to have. So that's where I am. Why don't you talk a little bit about where you are right now for Game Week 34?
Totally, yeah. So I'll put my team up here on the screen so everyone on the YouTube can see. So I kind of got away with it in Game Week 33, where last week you and we talked a lot about passivity versus sort of being a little bit more proactive with your transfers. And I decided to be passive. I had 2 frees for Game Week 33, and I just spent 1. And I decided to go with Sun for 1 more week. And
Uh-huh.
as Spurs were getting absolutely demolished, I thought I have made a terrible mistake. And I mean, Newcastle just looked sublime against them.
Yeah,
And Isak is wild card
it's
public
awesome.
target.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
good.
100%.
Um, but I think that the logic of holding Son was I want to see yet more from Liverpool. We had players like Jota coming back into the squad. What's that going to do to the squad rotation? And who do I want who's most assured of X minutes for the double in Game Week 34? So I'm glad that I'll be able to collect more of that information. I don't know if I'm going to learn anything from the Europa League fixture on Thursday other than maybe better odds for one person who might start for
Yeah.
one of these
I
doubles.
mean, yeah, exactly. If Darwin played 90 minutes, that
Hmm.
probably puts him maybe makes him a little less likely to
Yeah.
start, in at least one of the 2
Yeah.
matches in the double game week. I mean, who even knows? I mean, at this point, it wouldn't shock me if anyone got a rest. I mean, Mo Salah looks. What do you? I mean, I mean, I've already kind of stated a little bit my piece on Salah. I mean, what do you think about what he's played like the last handful of weeks?
Well, I think part of it is just he plays this style of football that relies on elite finishing. And if that elite finishing goes anywhere, which it can, like to finish the way he does, it just takes a whole lot of things going right. And I think he's just going through a rough patch. I don't see anything wrong necessarily with his movement or the way he's coordinating with his teammates. I think he's playing with his head up. He's looking for passes. So, I mean, I'm not going to say, wow, he's been playing well and his finishes have just eluded him. But looking at it's not always been all Mo Salah and Liverpool either win or lose. So I guess one of the issues that we're seeing with Salah is this Liverpool team is maybe out of sync for the last few weeks, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that if we, looking ahead to game week 34 here, I mean, when you think about captaincy, is Mo Salah still absolute with a bullet only captain you'd consider, or does Saka creep into the picture now? Maybe does your boy Dominic Solanke? How about a left field pick? Maybe Erling Braut Haaland, single game weeker. What do you think?
I feel like it might, like the way things are going, it's going to come down to a pen here or a pen there. You just mentioned Haaland. Haaland didn't have an exceptional game this weekend, but the fact that he's on pens, he walks away with a 10-pointer. And I think you put Haaland in the exact same camp as Salah in fantasy right now, in that they're going to be on the pitch. And they will be given the opportunities. And I think that Salah does make a case for captaincy in 34 just because of that, just because they'll be in the right place. Will they be there at the right time? I don't know. But if they are, it's points. So I still do like the heavy hitters in game week 34. I think I do like Salah a little bit more than Saka. I think I just do.
You haven't even set your bus team here, Brandon.
I know.
Haaland's still on the captaincy. I'm actually surprised, and I'm surprised you only have 5 doublers too, which is you have 2 transfers, so obviously you'll have 7. Would you consider hits? I mean,
I'll definitely be taking a -4. Will I be taking a -8? Is whether or not I decide I want to get a double or goalkeeper in, which. And I actually, now that here's the thing it all pivots on now for me, because I left it late with Liverpool. Now suddenly Trent Alexander-Arnold is an option, and Son getting downgraded.
He's an option-ish. Yeah.
What do you mean an option-ish? To get what's you have reservations there?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he looked terrible when he came on, but I mean, is he going to start twice in the double? I mean, it feels like that's.
Well, Connor Bradley going off with the injury, it's less. Now we've got another player in the rotation pool, and more Trent's the guy. So I think that's what augurs for the Trent option most of all. And it's a really interesting differential at this point for me.
100%. Yeah, that is true. I don't know why I'm. No, you're right. I mean, absolutely. I would be nervous about it just because I don't really know. I mean, I guess I'm just so down on Liverpool, but especially their defense right now. Right, it just feels like 2 away matches. This is fantasy. This is. Who knows? Watch them keep 2 clean sheets now, but it's hard to feel like they're going to. I mean, honestly, Palace. It was a little bit like Villa today at Arsenal, where in both cases. Well, actually, no. I would say in Villa Arsenal, I would say that Villa were arguably just the better team on the day. And obviously they took a different approach. It was more of a counterattacking approach. But when you play it to perfection the way they did, then that is better, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so whereas I think the Palace got away with one in the Liverpool game, right? I would say the Liverpool were ultimately pretty in control, but Darwin, can't finish, and just it was just and Dean Henderson had a great match, and and then the whole team. I mean, Munoz played well. I mean, it was a very good performance for Palace. I think it's easy to just completely snark on Liverpool for kind of blowing it, but I do think that Palace had some like heroic defending, right, that kept them in the match. But
Yes.
they could have scored a second goal as well. And I thought Mateta played well. Eze obviously scored too. And it's good to have them play well going into the double too, because it gives us some real options, I think, to consider now as we kind of move through the position. So I think we should do that, Brendan. I think we should start to talk about go position by position as we go through the double game week. I do just quickly want to shout out our Patreon supporters, which Brandon, we always do. It's important to us.
It is important. Absolutely.
I saw two of them on Friday night at my the public school gala that I went to, Brennan. That's right. I went to a gala. I was a gala attendee. I didn't wear a tie either. I went blazer, white cloth, like a Brooks Brothers shirt, but no tie. White cloth. I don't know what.
Cloth under your
I didn't wear like a white silk shirt. Yeah, and no tie. Like I did, kind of Obama style. Right now, no one's wearing ties anymore. I don't know, but it wasn't a suit. It was just a blazer with pants. If it was a suit, I would have worn a tie, I think. But I saw two of them there. Did you have any Patreons at the Toronto meetup? I can't remember if you.
Yeah. Shane and Lucas. Shout out to Shane and Lucas, our lovely Patreon supporters. Really fun to have interacted with them on the Discord and finally meet face to face.
Absolutely. So patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go to support the podcast. If you've enjoyed the podcast this season, if it has been helpful or entertaining as we complain our way through the fun. Well, actually, I think we've been keeping it pretty positive the last few weeks, honestly. Complained at the beginning of the season for sure. But as we sort of cheerfully get to the stretch run of this fantasy season, if it's been fun to listen to the podcast in your car or wherever you've listened to it, or we've actually been helpful, which is always possible, then you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. You get the extra podcast each week, and you also get access to our Discord, and we're going to be doing we're going to take it if they do challenge next year. We're going to start taking advantage of challenge as a kind of week off Patreon benefit, right? Like I think that's really where it'll be fun is it'll be a great way for patrons to kind of go for it with some funky teams, and we can set up some contests and things like that. So I think that'll be fun going to next season. And but also when we're off in June, we don't charge any of our Patreon supporters. So if you're worried about joining this late, don't worry. When we don't record, we don't charge our patrons. So patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go. All right, Brandon, should we get into some proper game week 34
Josh, I'm ready.
Here?
I'm ready.
Yeah,
let's go.
I think I'm ready. Let's pull up the fixtures here so we can talk those through a little bit as well. So we got a nice long week ahead here, Brandon. We've got it stretches. Let's see. Well, here, let me share so you can take a look at it as I'm talking.
I love a fixture ticker on the FPL site where you have to actually do some scrolling. That's epic.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. So it'll start on Saturday, April 20th. Isn't that the I think it's the birth of, is that Hitler's birthday, Brandon? So Hitler's birthday will kick off this double game week. Only three matches on the day.
If only the Dead Zone guy was able to get it together. We wouldn't have to celebrate this day anymore.
There's the birthday of Rome and Hitler's birthday. Like one is the 20th and one is like the 22nd. I can't remember which is which. Okay. And then it ends on Thursday, April 25th. So so a nice long stretch of matches every day except for Monday. And so I will be in America for the first half of this double game week, Brandon, and I'll be in Rome in Italy for the second half. So I'm hoping that I can actually sneak out and find some kind of Roman like pub where I can watch matches in the evening. So I'm a public house of some sort. And so I think that seems possible, right? Like I feel like one can.
Yeah,
Roman, they like sports.
They like Serie A, I think, primarily. So that might be your biggest roadblock. But I've never
Yeah, will
been to
there be
Rome, so I don't
competition?
know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll see. So yeah, I guess we'll I'll be on for next week's pod, and then yeah, so I guess that'll be like an in media res pod where we can just I don't know, complain about how things have gone so far, or whatever
Sure.
you end up doing. But
Mhm.
it's very spread out because it's also an FA Cup weekend, so you'll have some, you know, you typically get interesting match times there. So you see that on Saturday where there's two early fixtures and then a 2:30 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. in England start time for Wolves Arsenal. So that should be fun. I mean, I'm planning to have four players at least in that match, Brennan.
Oh yeah, and that will kind of kick off the double game week of it all because that's when the all the doublers will first be engaged in the game week, and we'll start to see, is this going to be blow the doors off, we're all scoring a bunch of points sort of double, or are we going to have to be cautiously more cautious about it?
Yeah.
So.
I'm my guess is caution will be our watchword
Yeah,
going into
I
that.
feel like there's probably going to be a clean sheet wipeout for Arsenal in that match, but I think there will be goals on both sides for
Yeah.
and I think we should walk away with a healthy bunch of points, us fantasy
Yeah, and
managers.
the early matches, we really it's a rare double game week that starts off with two pure watches. Just,
Hmm.
I mean, Sheffield United are a double game week team, but I don't know how much people are loading up on them. I mean, I guess like, well, you know what? So I got the fixtures up here. Let's start going through. Let's go position by position because there's at least one spot where you could consider a Sheffield United midfielder, Brandon. So let's talk about it a little. Let's talk, Brandon. Let's get
Let's
together, you and
wrap.
me, and
Okay.
talk right now. So let's go. We don't always do this, and as we go squad by squad, but I think it's useful to go position by position in this case because a lot of people are in similar spots to us where no, there's some people out there are just straight up free hitting, right? And that's
Hmm.
its own kind of situation, or they're bench boosting, which is kind of another one where, and in that case, you might as well kind of go all in as much as you can. And then you know the consideration really for people who are bench boosting is if you don't have a wild card left, you have to be slightly cautious, right, about how all in you go because as soon as game week 34 ends, we go right into another double game week, right, with Chelsea and Spurs. So it's a little easier for you and me because we're wild carding in 35, right, and so it's pretty easy to just kind of drop Son, for example. He's already gone from my
Hmm.
squad, right? But if you if you don't, then whether it's worth dropping Son for a kind of like a unreliable asset like Luis Diaz, right? Pretty good asset, like a B plus
Hmm.
asset. Is that worth it, right? Ahead of two doubles coming up for Spurs. I think it could be a little team dependent there, right? I think if you're in the 400s or 500s or whatever, and you're trying to make up ground in somebody who's first place in your mini league, I say drop them, go for
Hmm.
it, try to chase the high end results. I think that if you're winning your mini leagues, you may just want to punt on the upside and just hold off. Think of Sun as a long term asset that you just
Yeah.
want to have for 35 and 37.
Yeah, and watching Spurs this weekend, there was hard to pick out a star player. I mean, maybe Brennan Johnson was the best Spurs player out there this weekend, but Son
Yeah.
it's just going to be such a popular pick coming out of this double with Spurs immediately getting that double.
Yeah, yeah, that's going to be. At least we'll have Sun and Palmer, so we'll have. There'll be some opportunities to pivot a little bit
Hmm.
with the captaincy. So hopefully we'll get a nice division there. We've actually had that the last couple of weeks with Sun and Holland this week, and then last week it hasn't really been too extreme. I would say. I guess 10 to 2 is pretty big,
Yeah,
right? Like that had to
I
have
think
some
so.
impact.
I
Yeah,
think this was probably one of the bigger weeks in terms of separating out the captain winners and losers. So,
yeah,
condolences to the solid cappers. It was a
yeah.
good try.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, enough preamble here. The keepers that I think you'd want to consider. I mean, obviously we have the teams that double in 37 are the ones that you'd want to target here, and that's just as a quick refresher: Arsenal, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Everton, Liverpool, Sheffield, and Wolves. Right. So you have 7 total clubs that played twice across Gameweek 34,
Mm-hmm.
and just starting at the keeper position. Part of what makes it tricky is that arguably the best keeper that you could have for 34 is David Raya. Um, well, again, we have to just kind of forget this Villa match happened for a second, right? But it's certainly based on what we've seen the last number of weeks. It would be David Raya, but whether he's more valuable than an Arsenal defender or Odegaard or Havertz, that I think is a little trickier. I don't know. I don't feel quite as confident about that.
It's clear to me that he's not even as valuable as any other Arsenal defender. So if you're going to double up on the defense, it's got to be a Saliba or a Ben White. If you assume that Gabriel is the steady force in everybody's team, to get Raya just blocks you off from attacking points. Interesting that Zinchenko was like running away with bonus points. Zinchenko is like perennially the weak link in Arsenal's defense. Our friend, a friend of ours who's an Arsenal fan, was like, every time Zinchenko gives away the ball, it's a 0.8 xG chance for Aston Villa on average. That's a made up stat, by the way.
Was Kiwior that bad? I know he wasn't great in the Champions League, but like I thought he was playing pretty well. Like I thought
agree.
Things were working with him. I'm not quite sure why he lost his spot.
They were working. I mean, I guess Zinchenko does a slightly different role in that inverted fullback that Kiwior can't do. I mean, Zinchenko is just naturally a midfielder. But like, okay, to stay out like on task here.
Sure. Yeah.
I just don't see any way in which Raya is a viable asset.
Yeah.
In 34.
But just to stay on the Zinchenko thing for a second, I mean, there was a gaping hole on the left wing, on the kind of left back spot where that first goal was scored. And I mean, Declan Rice didn't like cover himself in glory there either. But where was Zinchenko on that play? Like nowhere.
We'll never know.
Yeah, he was not in the screen. The screen could not capture where Zinchenko was. So. And
we needed to use the tactical view to find him, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I need the what are they? It's like all 11, or there's like in the NFL they have like a tactical analysis thing they do. I think it's called all 11. All right, so I think if we take him out of the equation, then you're left with a bunch of interesting options. Honestly, I think you've got Henderson, who's the cheapest option. Crystal Palace have 2 home matches in 34. He's in good form, and I suppose we have to rethink. Brandon, we introduced the on the beach rankings on last week's pod. Crystal Palace were one of the inaugural teams in there. We did a tight 3 minutes on Crystal Palace and how they were no longer
and everybody loved it too.
Oh. It was great to rave reviews. Netflix has optioned that 3-minute bet.
Yeah.
And then they came out there and played marvelously, honestly. And so, I mean,
we were right about Brighton, though, Josh. Let's give ourselves a little
we were right about
credit.
Brighton. Okay, that's true. That's a good point. So I don't know how much of this is the new manager bump. I had forgotten that their manager was came from the Bundesliga as well, Brandon. He was what's our friend Eric Freeman's club? The
Frankfurt,
right?
Yes.
Yeah, he was the Frankfurt manager. So I think that was
maybe he should change his name to like Frankfurt, and then we could remember that. So
Dr. Frankenfurter,
yeah.
exactly, real, exactly. So I think that it's I think that he's worth considering. I think Pickford, just because again, it feels like Everton are they can't really score. Right. And so they're going to have to keep the matches tight. They still are at real relegation risk. The problem with Everton is that, one of their matches is relatively simple, right? Forest at home. The other one is Liverpool, and Liverpool have to really go for it right down the stretch. They have to just kind of, I don't think they can trust themselves to kind of win on defense down the stretch here, right? So
now, just so you don't get yourself in trouble there, I don't see the Everton Forest as a simple match. This is a huge 6-pointer. Like these are the penalty teams, the teams that are down there at the table because they've had to eat all these points because of the league telling them to do so. I think it's going to be a very heated game. So Everton have to play a huge 6-pointer at the bottom of the table, followed by playing their biggest crosstown rivals. So I do actually love Pickford for this, because I think that these are going to be wild all action games with lots of shots. I feel like I think for Pickford, he's probably going to be the keeper with the most save points this week. This is a wild prediction I'll put out there for game week 34.
I don't hate that. I think that's very possible. And what about Henderson? Like, would you give him a shout there? It's West Ham at home for Palace and Newcastle at home.
The performance against Liverpool it just bucks the trend with Henderson. I feel like the rest of the story over the last couple of years with him has been nothing, not good enough. So I'm not ready to say I'm going to put him above Pickford in my sort of like fantasy points Hoover rankings, just because of that one performance.
Yeah, and they had such a nice, solid Everton play tomorrow. We're recording this on Sunday, so it's we'll see how we're feeling, how rosy we're feeling about Everton after tomorrow's match. I mean, I'm sort of still thinking right now about their defensive chances, about how kind of solid and easy they made it in that home win over Burnley last weekend, right? So, let's see how they look. Let's see how many injuries they pick up over the weekend too, Brendan. So. All right. So I think those are, Jose Sa, I suppose, would be the other one that we could throw in there. If you were looking for a transfer, 2 home matches for them, Arsenal and Bournemouth at home. So I think he's a little bit like in that Pickford camp. He's more expensive, which makes things a little bit trickier, right? He's $5 million. I feel like I'd rather just go Pickford at 4.7, maybe save that 0.3.
This dude got an assist against Forest. Incredible scenes. Incredible scenes.
That's true.
8-pointer on after letting up 2 goals. But that's just Jose Sa's world. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, letting in 2 goals too, right? Which I feel like is what you see a lot with Wolves. I mean, I guess if I was ranking the 3 keepers that I would be targeting for this game, I think I'm with you on Pickford as well. I'm going to give a little more thought to Henderson, but I think I'm inclined to be with you, because you could see the Liverpool match, even if they don't keep a clean sheet, being the kind of match where he just faces, he gets 9 saves or something like that, right? They concede 2, but he gets 9 saves and finishes on 4 points. Maybe nicks a bonus point or something like that. Yep. So, so I think I'm with you. So I go Pickford, Henderson, and Sa. And then I think those would really be my 3. I wouldn't really consider even someone like Neto, who plays twice.
Alisson back. Wow. He's a pretty good goalkeeper. And this would be controversial if I just decided Luis Diaz and Darwin became Trent and Alisson. It seems deeply unfun, honestly.
Given how they've looked defensively, it does really feel super unfun. Especially because once Trent's back, that's like, I mean, clean sheets are going to be even harder to come by, right?
All right. The keeper's dusted. I believe. Okay. I am in agreement with you.
All right, we're moving on to defenders then. Right. So I now think that I was thinking about this earlier today, watching the Arsenal match, certainly the first 70 minutes or so, which is that there are 2 great defenses in the Premier League this season, but only 1 good defense for fantasy. So Arsenal and Man City are both very strong defensive teams. Man City has a confounding weakness for letting in a goal. Right. It's just they cannot help themselves. They're always going to let 1 goal in. And I don't know if it's this weird slip in concentration. It's funny because they have these in the matches, and yet I don't think of them as a team that chokes. Right. It's like they haven't really ever done what Arsenal kind of did the last 2 seasons, right? Which is
they do it in the Champions League all the time.
They do. That's true. They've done it in the Champions League many times. That's true. I'm glad you even things out here a little bit. So they've done that plenty, and we'll see what happens. They play Champions League midweek too. So I suppose the reason to hold off on making any transfers for a couple of days if you can avoid it, right? Because Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, and even Villa, Brent, even your boy Pau Torres might play at midweek. So a lot to come over the next couple of days.
Come on, Pau, stay fit. I just need to ride this gravy train all the way to game week 38.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, so defensively, I think there are basically, I thought about this a lot over the last week, and I ultimately decided that having two, it didn't really it didn't work out one way or the other this week. But I decided that having two Arsenal defenders was more worthwhile than having two Arsenal midfielders and one defender. And it almost worked, right? Because Odegaard was subbed off, didn't have a great match, especially in the second half. Havertz was okay, had picked up a yellow card late, and so it was really just kind of one or the other. And I decided that Diaz was worth owning. And honestly, if Diaz scores that goal, right, if Henderson doesn't make a kind of blind, brilliant save, then I'd be feeling pretty decent, honestly, about this game week. So yeah, I think having two defenders from Arsenal is really just the starting point for whether I was building a free hit team or if I had a couple transfers to use this week. And I say that even though their away match, or I mean, they're home to Chelsea, which is not a great match. I mean, I think they'll win that match, but Chelsea can certainly score goals, right? I mean, they concede a lot of goals too, but they certainly score. And then the other one is away to Wolves, and that could be tricky too, because Wolves are, I don't know. It's like it'll be an evening match, and in the Midlands, I think that could be kind of a tricky match for Arsenal.
Yeah, Wolves are in this weird sort of like nether form that's hard to explain. They're playing well, and it's almost to me, it's like a product of all of these individual players just finally sort of waking up and realizing the roles they're playing in the team, from Sarabia to Nuri to Cunha coming back, and now I just think I agree with you. They're a hard team to play right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't you might not fear that. Wow, I'm going to drop all 3 points to these guys, but I just don't know how we're gonna stack up against them.
Yeah, but I think it's, with all that said, if there was one team I was going to trust to keep clean sheets in fantasy, it would be Arsenal, right? Like more than any other team in the Premier League, let alone teams that double in Gameweek 34. So that's still why I would default to I guess the other answer would be just don't care about your defense at all. And I'm not even sure that's a terrible strategy. Just maybe you've got your one Arsenal defender already, and you bring in one of the Munoz, right? Some super cheap defender, and then use more of that money up front. I'm not sure you're going to find a great place to spend that money. But I will say, if I were free hitting this week, I would have 3 Liverpool still, but I would probably just go Diaz, Salah, Darwin. Hope one of the Diaz Darwin combo comes through for me, right? And I guess hope Salah comes through as well.
So then the rotation with Liverpool is kind of how I feel about it. Is just give yourself up to it. You can't control it. Notably with Liverpool, and I think they're I don't know. Assuming they get back to scoring goals, then one of those 3 guys is really going to help make your game week.
And the title race is still not over, right? And so by certainly not. And so I think and I certainly feel as though even with Jota back and healthy, I think that the top choice 11 for Liverpool involves Darwin up front and Diaz on the left. And it's hard for me to think that, at least for the moment, right? Because the title race is not going to be over at 34, that they don't play the top choice 11 as long as they can, especially because that Atalanta match is effectively over, right? I mean, down 3-0, about to go away. I don't know why Klopp would. I mean, if it was the Champions League, maybe, but because it's Europa League, why would he go all in that match? What's the value in that?
Yeah, and if Klopp, well, I can't speak for the Liverpool fans, so I won't. But I do feel like if Gakpo, Jota, and Elliott start up front in the Europa League, I still could end up with Luis Diaz and Darwin.
Yep. No, I think that makes total sense. So if you like the Arsenal defenders, we don't really love the Liverpool defenders. We're really picking at some kind of randos, right? Players in that kind of 4.5 million range. I think that I would probably, for the same reason that we like Pickford, I would look at Everton defenders. Michaelenko is sort of it's top of a lot of stats tables once you take Arsenal, Liverpool out of the equation. I think Munoz. I thought he had some really nice moments today too, Brandon, in the Liverpool
I'm
Palace
picking
match.
up a little bit of like you've got a Munoz crush sort of working,
Well, I
bubbling
do
up
like
here.
I kind of like him. I mean, it's I like I like quality, Brandon, and I know you've got Rolls Royce taste. You only like the players from top Big Six clubs, but to me, I'm
Sure.
happy to find some diamonds in the rough, lower in the table, and so that's my style. I like to find good players and celebrate them, and you don't, and that's fine.
Yeah, well, I just want to be. I want players that people are talking about randomly in the comments under posts for Fabio, whatever that guy's name is.
Or well, not Fabio Borges,
Fabrizio.
Fabrizio Romano, yeah, who I am still not convinced is a real
Arguing
person.
who's
Have
the
we ever
GOAT.
seen? Has anyone actually ever seen him talk, or is he just like an
Yeah,
amalgam of different? Okay, it'd be funny if
I
he was
have.
like, yeah, if he was like a composite of just like all of these various accounts under the name Fabio, or maybe it was like Simone. Wasn't that movie Simone about
Sure,
three
yeah,
famous
with
cancer?
Al
Yeah.
Pacino.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not.
Ooh,
I'm just okay. Here's my question for you. Sure, maybe you've seen him talk. What are the odds that Fab Romano is flesh and blood? Not saying there isn't a composite out there, some kind of AI
Sure,
generated thing,
deep
but do you
state,
think
deep fake.
if you cut him, does he bleed?
I'd be inclined to go with Jan, and I'm not suggesting we find out. I don't want to find out.
No. There's only one way to find out. I agree with you, but I don't think we should find out either. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess I'll be like David Duchovny in X-Files here, and it's just like I just kind of want to believe that he's real, and so don't take that
Yeah.
away from me.
Yeah, kind of the opposite for me. I want to
Okay.
believe he's not real. I think that'd be very interesting if he was a
Fab
bot.
is out there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, so I think that he'd be up there on the Arsenal defensive front, though. If you were just going again with Brandon's kind of Rolls Royce taste, I would still put Saliba above White, especially with White getting. Well, it's interesting with White because
worked out for White today, didn't it?
Did. Oh, I know. You see, I went the coward's way out, got Saliba the whole season. I am stripping my entire FPL approach down to the bones. The way that I manage FPL, Brandon, it's gonna be like like one of those like home renovation shows, where I'm gonna get down to like the good bones of my like FPL philosophy and get rid of all this dreck, this like cowardice that has characterize some of my decisions this season. But anyway, I still like him. I mean, I think that White getting subbed off early is honestly worries me a little bit. Kind of, it's a little bit like when Kiwior was subbed off in the Man City match, right? And with that said, White probably had the best assist XA chance of the match for Arsenal, right? He set up that very good chance, and so I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I think that it's well, I guess Gabriel also had that chance.
He's fine. I mean, I think that the Ben White thing can also be viewed through the lens of the Odegaard substitution, where Arteta was just kind of doing Arteta / Pep things of getting ahead of himself. Like, okay, I'm going to make some transfers with the midweek in mind. I mean, I can't see a world in which tactically in that Villa match, it made sense for Smith Rowe to be playing instead of Odegaard. And suddenly the game just slipped away from Arteta at that point. So I think Ben White came off not because of any performance related thing. It was strictly because of the Bayern match.
Wow. I mean, that is so grim if that's true, because it was a weird one. Again, it's hard for me to keep this strictly FPL because if so, that means that in the Man City match and the Villa match, he effectively didn't try to do everything he could to win those two games, and that he sort of prioritized grabbing a point out of both of them. And given how tight the table is this season, you wonder if it made more sense to try to go for 3 points in one or both those matches. I mean, the Man City match, we don't really talk about that because it is a good point away, but I just wonder if he went all out in that match, could they have won? I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, that's just the way the results end up. It's unfair to Arteta, but there will be lots of regrets, I think, when they look back on this season if things
I don't
don't
know
turn
how
around.
unfair it is. I mean, he's the manager, and
Yeah.
and
Oh, well, yeah.
he
I
made
mean,
a bunch of subs today that effectively cost Arsenal at least a point, if not three.
right. I'm mixing my words there. I don't disagree with you.
So any final thoughts on defenders, Brandon, before we move on to midfielders? I mean, it's really just kind of, once you get past Arsenal, I'd say Liverpool are really unreliable. I think Trent, as you talked about before, is a fun high upside pick. I would
Yeah.
not recommend Van Dijk just because he's so expensive, and
Yeah.
defensively they feel really shaky right now.
Yeah, I think my last thought is for anybody who's transferring or free hitting, the defense seems like a place where you might want to save money and to bring in some more exciting, heavier hitters up front. Just like clean sheets have not been the business during this season.
Yeah.
And Arsenal defenders, I think, are not coverage picks because you've made the case that they do present like big upside there, and probably better upside than trying to hit the right formula of Arsenal
Yeah.
attackers. So that's the way I view it.
I will say on Van Dijk, he actually created two pretty good chances in today's match,
Mhm.
yeah, the Endo, if Endo's shot goes in, I wonder how different that match ends up. I suspect Liverpool actually ends up winning that match, but once the Endo shot, it was actually an interesting game, like an interesting day for inside of the crossbar goals that still didn't go in, right? I mean, I guess you had the post chance with Watkins too, right? Where it's so rare that a ball ricochets off the post the way that Watkins shot did, and it doesn't go in afterwards, right? It was like just the physics of it. You just expect it to it was the inside
Mhm.
post, It was
Yeah.
weird that it just missed the other end.
And then the
Great shot.
Tielemans shot at the end of that Arsenal match that hit the crossbar and then the post too. It's a wild, sort of like geometric shots
Yeah,
today.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like pool today. It was interesting angles. All right, so let's move on to the midfielders. I'll note, by the way, thank you to Michael Scott. Wow, the office is Michael Scott, who
Mhm.
notes that Arteta said that Odegaard had a minor issue, and that was why he
Okay,
was
I'm
subbed
not
off
going to
in that
call
match.
anybody a liar. First of all, I'm not calling Michael a liar. He's reporting the facts as he
Right.
understands them. But of
Yeah.
course, okay, I'll be a conspiratorial mind on this podcast. Of course, he'll say that
Okay.
instead of
Yeah.
Arteta saying, "Oops, oops, that was dumb."
Oops, I
Uh,
did it again, Britney Spears style.
I mean, we can start walking into this is like talk sport territory of like, well, what's
Sure.
Odegaard saying? Like, I got to come off because I got a niggle. Come on,
Sure,
buddy, suck
sure,
it up.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. Sometimes those turn into season-ending injuries, Brandon. So we'll see what happens
Okay.
there, and then I'll I don't know. I guess I won't have the last laugh, but at least I'll be the one who seemed sensible while you seemed wildly reckless.
Fair.
I'll take that
Hmm.
position. So, all right. So the top midfielders, though, we at least have a range of options and prices here, right? So, oh, the other one, by the way, that we didn't talk about is Eight Nori for Wolves, and I think he's a tricky one now because he was. It was like 50-50 basically. It looked like he was probably going to be okay based on the managerial comments, and then he ultimately was not deemed fit enough to start. It He's probably going to start at least one, if not both of the matches next week, but it just makes you a little nervous, right? When a player
Yeah.
is on that kind of precipice of whether he's fit or not. And I just hate going to a double with, I think if you were free hitting, you might as well just go for it and toss him in there, right? In the starting lineup. But if you're not, then you're just in a tougher spot. I probably would just not get him at all.
Occasionally, you get the from the club Instagram post of "Look who's back in training," and if that's Eight Nuri and he's smiling on the pitch with his buddies,
Yeah.
then
Yep.
sure, go for it. Let's all do it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's
Otherwise, I agree with you.
yeah, it's a tricky one. He's played extremely well. So I
Yes.
do like him as a high upside pick. And the fact that he has this injury issue will prevent some people from getting him, and so there's even more
Yeah.
of an edge possibly if you're okay
Yeah.
with the risk.
I guess you argue that he's been occupying the space that Huang He-Chan would be playing in
Mm,
now, and he's back fit. And
that's
does Eight
true,
Nuri being back, even if he is fit, is playing in a slightly different role? So
right?
that's a further complication with him.
This is the Pedro Porro, James Madison dilemma. The Porro did score a couple weeks ago. All right, so anyway, let's get to the mids though. So at the top, we've got no surprise here. We got Salah and Saka as the kind of two top picks for Game Week 34. I think that's clear. Saka, I do think I might talk myself into a Saka captaincy for 34, just because I'm just very frustrated with my overall rank, and I'm having a hard time making any kind of gains. And if I captain Salah, I'm going to be in the same spot, kind of no matter what he does, right? And if I captain Saka and Salah goes off and Saka blanks, well, I'm 450. I guess I'll be 550, right? It does like I don't. Whereas if Saka can really go off in these next two fixtures and Salah continues to do very little, then maybe there's a little bit of an edge there. So I'm not like on the record saying I'm going to go Saka here, but I'm at least going to entertain it as an idea, because I do want this double game week to be fun, and I don't want to feel like I've just got the same team as everyone else going into 34.
Just thinking of that goal that Saka did score against Bayern Munich was just like a beautiful classic Saka on his left goal.
Yeah.
I wish we saw more of that,
He
but
almost, he almost did today. I mean, he had a great chance. Barely, that was the Ben White chance I was talking about before. It barely went wide.
I think you could argue that Saka is just playing well. You could definitely argue this that he's playing better than Salah, and it is a good captaincy shout. So I think he's right there with Salah in terms of vying for your attention.
I think once you get past those two, you've got some interesting, not necessarily captainable players, but you've got Diaz, you've got Eze, scores a nice goal today. It was a good team goal today, honestly. And, Tariq Mitchell to Eze on the goal. And we're not talking about forwards yet, but I did think Mateta had some nice moments too. He was offside, but the back heel attempt on that goal was pretty slick. That looked very cool. I wish that was like a Sadio Mane style. He used to use the back heels from time to time like that.
Yeah, Rodrigo Muniz had a similar sort of attempt.
See, here we go. No, not Munoz, Muniz. Okay,
Muniz, not your boy Munoz, but my boy Muniz. He had a very kind of quietly solid game of hold up play. Nowhere close to fantasy points though.
Yeah, as SWAT notes, Brandon, in the comments, we got to make fantasy fun. Right.
Indeed.
So yeah, exactly. So I think, what do you think? I mean, Muniz, do you think you keep him for 34, by the way? I don't mean to get us off the midfield discussion.
Well, I think if I go the Trent route, then it would be Son downgraded to get that money. Probably Son to Louise, and I'd have the money to turn Botman into Trent. And then I honestly wonder if I'm more tempted to get in Pickford than I am Darwin. That seems kind of insane. But that would be the case to keep Muniz.
You could argue just based on form and things that it's, I don't know. It's in the end, like it's usually good to default to the best players from the best teams, right? Like that is I think this because of what happened today, I feel like it's going to screw with all of our heads for a couple of days, right? It's just hard to see the two results today and not feel like, well, who even cares, right? Eze is outscoring Luis Diaz. But I do think on balance across two fixtures, give me the Arsenal Liverpool players, right? Like give me Odegaard and Diaz, Odegaard and Diaz over Eze. Although I do think that Eze is a super fun option for 34. He's 6 million, so you could move. Like if you're free hitting, right? Oh, I absolutely love him on a free hit, right? I think he'd be a fantastic option, maybe even for a bench boost, right? If you maybe you don't have as much value in someone like Cole Palmer, right? Like for you and me, it would kind of a tricky spot, right? But if you were bench boosting, and I mean, again, it's tricky if you don't have a wild card. But I think that if you really were going all in on 34, I think that Palmer to Eze is a move that makes some sense.
Yeah, and then next on the chart is Michael Elise, and I was working with Lucas at our Toronto meetup yesterday on his free hit, and it was all working except he was slightly over budget. And what we had to do was turn Eze into Elise, and suddenly it all clicked into place.
Ooh.
And I wondered, like Eze got the goal today. He is the better FPL performer historically, but
Yeah.
Elise is no slouch. And I think Elise is an interesting make weight for price if you need a little
Yeah.
extra cash in your bank, because he could easily be an under the radar star for 34.
It's true. He's so injury prone,
Yeah.
but again, that's part of the edge that you want for these game weeks is how can I find someone that no one else is going to have because they're too nervous for one reason or another, right? Like there's too much risk, and so they don't want to deal with it. So, it's just viewed through that lens, I see Elise as being very appealing too. Kai Havertz, we talked about him a little bit on the last week's pod, and then a little more on the Patreon pod. Neither of us ultimately went there. The returns have been amazing from a fantasy point of view. Are we still sleeping on him, Brandon? Kai?
Yeah, it's we are. I think that he still is getting the minutes, and he was all over the pitch against Aston Villa to not the best of effect today.
I mean, I am not like his biggest supporter by any means, but if you had to give me, if I could only keep one player up front right now, Gabriel Jesus or Kai Havertz, I know who I'm picking, and that's Kai
that's the
Havertz.
thing, right? Like Jesus didn't have a performance against Villa that made you sort of say, "Hey, wait a minute, why has Havertz been getting all these minutes?" No, Havertz is still the dude for Arteta, and I think that'll stay that way. So I think he's a great differential pick this week.
Yeah, I like him too. And one final midfielder to toss in there is Sarabia. Again, 4.7 million. Now some players are coming back from injury for Wolves, and so maybe that affects his positioning or the number of chances that he gets involved in. But I think that he's considered a very valuable player for Wolves, and I'd be shocked if he didn't get serious minutes across the double game week, if not play 180. Honestly, right? I feel very good about Sarabia, and at 4.7 million, he's kind of the perfect enabler, right? If you need to find room to squeeze one extra kind of premium player into your squad, I think even if you don't, honestly, I think he might just be one of the best midfielders straight up for 34.
Yeah, he's turning into the quarterback of that Wolves team, which is cool to watch. Now, just so we get fair play for all the clubs, I think you mentioned that it would be in the midfielder section, but we do have to shout out Sheffield United. And one of the transfers that I found most interesting since January was Brereton Diaz, who has looked like he always is like super high energy. He's got that flowing hair, which probably makes him look like he's running faster than he actually is. But I've really enjoyed watching him play. I can't imagine like using one of my 11 for him. But if you had a bench boost and you needed to fill a slot, he's fun.
Well, and I think that if you were looking at which double game week team has the single best fixture in 34, it's probably Sheffield United hosting Burnley, right? On Saturday. That's probably the single best fixture for anybody. Now, granted, there's still Sheffield United. They're still, probably going to get relegated as soon as this game. I mean, it's coming. I don't know if this game, but it's coming very quickly, right? Especially with Palace winning. Just like it's like one more team that can't kind of fall into the. I think Palace are now 8 points clear, right? With 4 weeks to go, there's very little chance I think that they're going to go down now, but or 5 weeks. So I think. But anyway, they're inconsistent. But if you want to just take a swing, and he's only 5 million, right? I think that he makes some sense as well.
It's just speaking of things that are already ordained. Bayer Leverkusen won the Bundesliga outright today. So
hey, look at that! Nice.
Cheers to them. What a run!
Yeah. And Xabi said he was not going anywhere. Right, he's going to stay there too. So that's pretty cool because at least they'll get one. I mean, honestly, they were awesome in the Europa League on Thursday too, right?
Yep.
Like
they still haven't lost a single match this season across all competitions. So there's still a lot to root for them. Still a lot to play for, which is incredible.
Yeah. Was it the first Bundesliga title too for Bayer Leverkusen?
That I don't know.
If it's not the first, they don't have many.
One of a few.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So maybe I'll look in a second here. So, all right, well, let's move on to the final grouping of players then, Brandon. We had some questions, but I think we've kind of honestly gone through all of them as well. So we'll just kind of make this our last section for today, which is forwards. And I think that there is a little, a little meat in the bone, some things to talk about here, Brandon. So we've got, we have Darwin, who we've talked about a lot. It's kind of like, if you've got him, you're keeping him. If you don't have him, I think it's gotten harder to justify having him. I think that I would probably, if I were to rank my top forwards for game week 34, I would now say I would put Solanke first. Which again,
you've pulled this data from FPL Review, and it's interesting to see that Review has said Solanke's predicted of all the forwards across the game to get the most points in 34.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I think that they're Solanke, Darwin, Mateta. There's I don't know how much there is between all of these options, really. And so I think if you were if going for Mateta over Darwin saves you almost 3 million, if that's something that helps you to get I don't know, Odegaard or something like that, then I think it's probably worth it at this point. Like I do not feel super confident that Darwin starts both of these matches, right? Especially if Jota has any kind of decent performance in the Europa League.
Yeah, same. Yeah, Darwin. God, the stock is just so quickly plummeted on these Liverpool assets. It's kind of like boggling my mind. Like, I'm really just going to start spending my transfers on Wolves and Everton instead of Liverpool. So I feel like it's smart to get over that. Like, suck it up. Liverpool's still an amazing team. They are still going to be pushing for the title. And there are just fantasy points to be had.
I know.
To get over that.
I think we all collectively have to. At least I already have my 3, so at least I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm just like, unless one of them gets injured or something, I just I have them and it's done. And thank goodness, because I was sick of thinking about it. I think that Solanke's played really well. I mean, I don't know. I'm honestly a little surprised at his effect. I guess people are kind of making the Isak move, and who am I to blame them, Brandon? Right?
I mean, smarter than us, it seems.
Yeah, and honestly, if I had Isak, they play away to Palace, in the double game week. Wouldn't you just keep Isak? Like, I feel like I would rather just have Isak for one leg than maybe any of these forwards for 2 legs in 34.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine a scenario in which you would have transferred Isak in where you were still planning to wild card. Like,
I think it'd be more like it was people who just went for Isak because of the upcoming double for them, right?
Yeah,
and
right. So therefore, you can't drop him. You keep him.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, and also, I mean, what's even more fun is they don't play this weekend and they play on Wednesday. So you don't even have to have that thing where you're like, well, I don't want to be all out of my forwards early on in the week. Actually, I'm not even including on here on my little screen share with you. There is on Thursday is the Man City match too, where they play away to Brighton. So I think that I think it is actually a game week where you may just want to keep your forwards. I mean, I in your case with Muniz, it feels like maybe the form has finally dipped, right? He was kind of molten hot for a while there, and now it's
I think if it's not Darwin, Cunha is just very tempting for a fun pick. There are too many. There are like too many options to replace Muniz here to not do it.
I'll do another shout out though for Mateta though, who I think has been sneaky good the last handful of weeks. He's thought he played well today. Didn't get an attacking return, but he has 3 goals in his last 5. He's played the full 90 or close to it in 4 of those 5 matches as well. Got subbed up in 73 in game week 32. And so, and those were not all those fixtures were easy either. I mean, that includes scoring when they hosted Man City. Again, played well away to Liverpool. So I think with 2 home matches and the fact that he's only 5 million, I do think the Mateta is an appealing asset for sure for 34.
Right. Yeah. Any other forwards we should be concerned about? What do you think about Haaland this week? I mean, Haaland playing Brighton, who just continue their descent into madness.
Yeah.
There will be people out there, Josh, who will say, why not captain Haaland.
Yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately you still have Saka and Salah, right? Who are
the double.
Like Saka, Salah, Haaland are probably the three. Well, I got. How about Watkins? Should we throw him in there too? I mean, Watkins is insanely good. Both as a player and as a fantasy asset. They host Bournemouth, and so maybe you should just transfer in. I mean, it's too bad that they don't have a double coming up.
Let's get Isak and Watkins in this week. To play Haaland, Watkins, and Isak across the
I know.
top.
I mean, I remember a few weeks ago you were like, or this is like 10 weeks ago now, but you were like, I'm just going to keep him the rest of the season. And I wish we both had, right? We both better keep scoring all these goals. And then we all go all in on these double game weeks, and it's such a killer. But I think, they have the second leg of the Champions League, and then they play the FA Cup match on Saturday with where they're home too. They host Chelsea at home on Saturday, Man City. And then they play away on Thursday. So I think that Haaland just would probably start all three of those matches. He already got his one rest. That's probably enough for him.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think it's Haaland starts for the rest of the season. Maybe he misses out on a start game week 38 just to make things just to double down on the misery for us, Josh.
Yeah, and I think that and Brighton's defense is just exactly. I think Brighton's defense is really. I mean, they're just having a really rough season at this point. Mm-hmm. So I think I wouldn't be looking at even on actually this is an interesting question. On a free hit, would you still have Haaland, or would you go with like another double game weeker?
I think on a free hit, God, that's tricky, a really difficult question because you look at that fixture for City and you think that's 4-0. 4-1. You've got to give, the opposition, whoever they are, their obligatory one goal. So I think it takes some courage to not have Haaland.
Yeah.
But I love the cleanness of a free hit, and it's all doublers. I love that for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, kind of going back to what you were saying about Son, and if you're at the top of your mini league and you're just looking to hold your ground, I would absolutely 100% have Haaland. Yeah. If your only goal is to leapfrog in rank, then go without him on a free hit.
I think that's right. Hope he gets rested, right? Yeah. Hope that he gets subbed off early or something like that. It's still an away match, right? So it's not like he's just going to be at home just peppering the goal. Like the Luton match yesterday had a kind of inevitability. It was like Haaland was going to stay out there until he scored, right?
Like the only clear-cut chance he had, what was right in the opening seconds where he got it on his right foot and flubbed it right at the keeper, and he just by happenstance got the subsequent rebound.
Yeah, had an overhead kick. Yeah, overhead kick into row D. That got deflected into the goal. Yeah. 2 own goals in 2 weeks for that defender. By the way, that's pretty rough.
That guy, I remember him being a crucial part of Bournemouth's comeback in the second half. Remember when Luton looked like they were flying at the Vitality? Whoever that guy is, like
Hashioka.
Good luck to him in the future, wherever he may be. It won't be in the Premier League.
Yeah. I guess it was 2 and 3. Yeah, but he had a -1 and a -2 in his last 3 matches. So I know poor Luton. They've been one of our favorite clubs this season in good ways and bad, but it feels like they're just kind of. It's like the the motor's puttering, Brandon. It's like it's kind of just pulling in. It's like a NASCAR race. And it's like they probably needed to bring those tires in for one more rotation for the final few miles.
It's like at the end of Predator when all of the mercenaries, they just start peeling off one by one, and there's the Native American guy who just says, "You know what? It's the end of the line for me. Like you guys go on ahead. I'm going to stay here and fight the Predator." Even though I know it's certain death, I feel like that's Luton right now, where they're like, "Go on ahead."
Yeah, no, I'm still a believer because they less with Everton, right? So when you look at the table right now, let me stop and then I'll share the table with you. I'm just going to share the bottom of the table, Brian, the fun part of the table. Now the top part of the table is too depressing to be shared. So you have Everton with 2 games in hand on Forest and Luton, and and they're already like a point up as well. So I think Everton should be fine. I guess if they lose both those matches, or don't even pick up a point, they might be in trouble. But I think with Forest and Luton only separated by 1 point, I just think Luton can do one thing well, or at least have been able to do one thing well, which is score goals. And I typically side with the club that can score a little bit, right? And Forest have actually been. I mean, Morgan Gibbs White has played quite well recently, but I think that I just wondered if Luton might just nick like one extra win, one extra point, just enough to just edge out Forest. Yeah,
I'd love to see it. I'm rooting for you, Luton.
Yeah, and then I think Burnley and Sheffield are pretty much screwed.
Toast.
Yeah, I think they're in trouble. All right, well, that is 34. Lots to think about, lots to consider. I think that we'll do a Patreon pod on Thursday. That'll be after all the European stuff, so we'll have more time to sift through. I think I'll have a much better sense of exactly what I'm planning to do. I'm planning to do -4 myself, though. I think I'm kind of, again, sort of like you were talking about before. You might as well. What is the point of me trying to scrape by with my keeper in an away match? Like, let me just take on a keeper and hope he can have some stand on his head in one match and pick up 10 points or something.
Yeah, it's a -4 or a -8 for me, and I've been kind of playing catch up a little bit just to get some more doublers into my team. But at least I get to see what happens with Liverpool through the course of the week and see how all these teams look in Europe midweek. Curious to see.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll be curious if West Ham can do anything too in that Leverkusen match. Not super FPL relevant, but just interested.
For sure.
All right. Well, that's the pod. Thanks everyone for listening. And we'll be back on Thursday with Patreon pod. Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Yeah, thanks as always to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner Lodall, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch, Carrie Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Wings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Volker Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Cram, Thomas Tislop, Noah Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Frode Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lolly, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Gareth H., Rune Sandberg, Brian Clark, and our newest producer from last week, James Murray Wood. Welcome, and thank you so much, James. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch a video of this podcast to see what we're sharing on screen, see our lovely faces on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@alwayscheating. Follow us wherever you get social media. And our website is alwayscheating.com. Josh, I will see you on Thursday for our Patreon episode.
Yeah, I'll see you on Thursday. Good luck to everybody who's got Chelsea players tomorrow. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Hit the